Welcome to Vision 2222, the podcast where we explore the scientific, technical, social, and human changes that we might see if we were able to travel 2 centuries into the future. We interview leaders in science and technology and experts in business and the humanities to take a look into the possibilities of the future. Our guest this episode is Tanveer Chaudhary, who is an expert in leading successful product design teams in industries as varied as oil and gas, medicine, and consumer software. Vision 2222 is the brainchild of Mikhail Gladkikh and his co-hosts Amanda Chadee and myself, John Marsh. I'm a university administrator in a materials science department where I get to see researchers discover and develop the materials that will enable us to solve energy and environmental challenges and make it possible for humans to travel to Mars and beyond.
And I'm Amanda Chadee, consultant and mentor to early stage startups in biological and life sciences. I specialize in business development and funding strategies to support these startups in the move from discoveries within the lab to commercial products.
And my name is Mikhail Gladkikh. I'm a technologist and a science fiction writer. I specialize in additive manufacturing and what is called Industry 4.0, that includes digital supply chain, advances in design and manufacturing technologies, and everything that's related to new and advanced manufacturing methods. And as a science fiction writer, you can find me at my website at mikhailgladkikh.com. So now switching to introducing our guest, and I'm extremely excited to host today Tanveer Chaudhary, who I worked with several years ago. We actually taught a class together at one of the conferences in Houston, and she's an expert in what's called design thinking methodology and everything that's related to new product design, project management, but really user-centered or human-centric design, which is the foundation of the design thinking methodology. And Tanveer spent time in Microsoft, and now she's an independent consultant advancing and evangelizing that design thinking methodology throughout different industries and different organizations, different businesses. So Tanveer, really excited to have you here on the podcast with us today.
Thank you, Mikhail, and thank you, everyone, John and Amanda, for having me here. I really appreciate the opportunity of speaking and being part of the thoughts that are going to be floating around 2222. I'm excited to speak about my thoughts on this podcast. As a background, I have started my career as a technical consultant, and then I moved into design and project management. Currently, I'm a consultant in IT for over 15 years, have been part of different domains and industries, and have been sharing my experience on solving digital problems or digital transformation in these industries. I do have a community, a design thinking innovation, that I work closely with City of Houston and other communities in Houston to bring transformational changes in people and processes.
Thank you, Tanveer. I appreciate that. And again, really excited, very happy to have you here. I think we're going to have an exciting conversation, have great questions and great topics. And what I'd like to start is, I think, one of the most important things. You're the expert and the evangelist of design thinking methodology. Can you tell us a little bit more about it? What is it? How is it different from traditional design engineering? What is the catch?
So design thinking is one of the methodologies around user-centric design, and it has a different approach of looking at a problem than the traditional design engineering. The catch is the mindset it places you while working on a problem statement. The emphasis is to understand the problem space better by empathy and observation. Instead of traditionally how we break down a bigger complex problem into smaller areas to find each solution and then bring it up. In design thinking, we build based on a perception or definition of the problem, and then we build our solutions upon them. So rather than believing in boundaries, design thinking allows you to expand your thought, the space, and encourages creativity. Instead of theoretical concepts, it encourages experimentation and validation, involving end users in each step. The last point that I want to bring is not the least, it encourages collaboration and co-creation and in T-shaped teams. So when I say T-shaped, it encourages people from different skill sets, deep skill sets, to come together and work together, share their ideas, and come up with a solution. And the collaboration usually happens between visual tools, informal ways of documenting rather than very formal prototyping, presentation, and building lengthy requirement or technical documentation as generally done in design engineering traditionally. Personally, I have had a transformative effect on myself on following practices like empathy and observation. The mindset itself has changed the way I look at life or any problem in formally at work or in life or when dealing with people in the communities. Observing empathy has changed the way I work in teams and collaborate and interact with people, even outside work.
So this is more about people. So you mentioned things like empathy with users during your development and problem definition. So it's more about people. It's not really about technology, but then you still need to go through validation, verification, and make sure that your solution has quality and reliability and all of that. How do you combine the two?
Right. I would just say instead of two, I would say three. So there are three aspects of any innovation: the business part, the viability of how you would, support an idea, how it is, how it can make you profit, how you can sustain it on a longer period of time. The second part is technical feasibility. Is it the idea even technically possible with what we have in today's world? And the last piece is the desirability, that is the human part, where we are including the desires and needs of a human being to use your solution. So design thinking is a balance between all three different aspects. And when it comes to differences with the traditional design engineering aspects, many of these approaches in traditional design engineering approach, the innovation needs come from either the business to earn more profit, to increase ROI, and etc., or from the technological approach where they have found a new technology and they just want to use it to look cool, right? To say that, as a company, we are using this technology and, we are making things better. And either of these approaches are not wrong, but many of the times it happens that while using these two approaches, we tend to ignore what actually your end user needs or whether they need it or not. So putting upfront the need of users, your people who use your organization's products or services, is what is about design thinking and how it makes it different.
All right, thank you, Tanveer. That explains it. And that actually brings my next question. When I'm thinking about it, I hear a lot about, like in software development world, people focus on user experience. What is the difference between user experience and design thinking, or is there a difference?
So when it comes to the concept level, they both focus on the main aspect, the user needs. Historically, the UX and design thinking has been parallel methodologies. They became popular after popularity of emphasis on the technology advancement for making life easy for the users. That was way before we got the invention of computer and then how it can be used to develop different products and services, and like early in the era 70s and 80s and 90s, in 1900s, like the previous century. So in this case, both these methodologies, the UX methodology and the design thinking methodology, were being discussed and named by contemporaries of the innovators during this time. The design thinking was named design thinking by David Kelly and his team partners at IDEO. They called it design thinking because they were talking about a lot of innovation, and they thought that any design that they build needs to have clear thought process behind it. There's a lot of information available about how they came up with this name. And at the same time, UX was being considered only during that time by other giants like Apple. And they started having positions like UX design lead or design consultant, so forth. And Don Norman was involved there to get these concepts included, where they will see a product and how the user reacts to them and what are the gaps between their expectation and then the product that is being offered to them. At a high level, design thinking is more strategic methodology. Both these technologies keep the user needs as their center to develop products or services that combines the user needs with the technology. But the slight difference in the concept is how these are implemented and when these are implemented. So as I was saying before, at the high level, design thinking is more at the strategic methodology, and it combines creativity with user needs to innovate products, processes, and services. Whereas the UX design is more towards creating better experiences at a more tactical and build level. So that's what differentiated. design thinking is more strategic and UX design is more tactical.
No, I understand. Thank you. And you do have a certification from IDEO. They're the pioneers of design thinking approach, and I've heard a lot of stories and a lot of products that they created. So this is really interesting, very exciting. How can you define user experience really if you don't have the product yet? And how can you create something new and innovative that doesn't exist yet, but just based on the wishes of the users, or when you empathize with users? Aren't we in danger of building what Henry Ford called a faster horse instead of automobile?
No, absolutely. And that is what you said, right? Design engineering comes with a thought, and then they start building better technology and better versions of what they have already built. So that is how I call design engineering, that they try to build this better versions of already what they have. So when it comes to the user-centered design methodologies like UX or design thinking, the key aspect to learn about creating the experience, knowing that the product itself is just, or the technology itself is just a part of overall experience that the user uses. So let me rephrase it. The key aspect to learn about creating an experience is the product is just part of the overall experience. The experience creation starts from understanding the journey and the various touch points that are possible while the user is interacting with your product. Let's take an example. Say it's my grandparents' anniversary and I want to send flowers to them, and maybe something customizable, a personal touch that would be for each of them. So I've seen this new application floating around for customizable gift on the social media and a lot of TikTok videos and YouTube videos on that. I go to their browse and download their application on my phone and order flowers, and then have some personalized gifts. And then I place the order on the designated day. The gift reaches to my grandparents. They are pretty happy seeing the surprised flowers at their front door, and then they are excited about receiving the gifts. But what happens is, it was a hot day, and then the flowers became a little droopy by the time they noticed there was flowers on the front door. So anyhow, they were happy. So the experience of me going on the application, ordering, or even seeing the advertisement, and then opening the application, downloading it, placing the request, and then the end result reaches to my grandparents is all part of that experience. Everything related to social media ads or the flower delivery at the right time, or the right space, everything is part of the journey and experience. So everything that comes in here needs to be defined and created by the user experience designers or the user-centered designers. So when it comes to how do we create these experiences even before the product exists, and that is a catch. We try to understand user needs beforehand. And then there are tools and techniques in user-centric design process that provide the guideline to perform activities that allow you going deeper into each innovation process through divergence and convergence. So there are different parts to it. There are 3 parts to it. Part 1 is when we are in process of understanding the problem. And during this process, there are a lot of primary and secondary research done, and there is a deeper attempt to understand the problem that is happening. The idea is not just to ask users what they want, but the emphasis is given to empathizing and observing user perform the action in current situations. And then sometimes during design thinking phase, the researchers shadow the users to perform these actions to understand their true pain points. If the user is currently using horses, for example, to travel, then typically gather all the information regarding the concept, like generally from where they travel, where they live, from typically what is their usage, what are the other alternatives if the horse is not available, what do they use? So understanding everything about the context is the first phase of the design. The part 2 is the convergence process, where we have all this information that we have received in part 1, all the data that we have received, and bring them together. During this process, these pain points gets discussed deeply. There is typically a triangulation of information gathered to make sense of identified pain points. The ideation is done in order to generate insights on why users are facing this issue. The emphasis is on why, and digging deeper till we get the answer to that why. So what are they trying to actually achieve? How are they performing these tasks? And why are they doing these steps? So these are different aspects that We try to answer in depth from the data that we have received or from the observation that we have seen in the field. And all this data gets combined together to form insights of real reasons behind what happened. Take an example of what is the insight generation process and what is the importance of it. And I most popularly take the example of Newton observing the apple falling from the tree. And why it is so important is because everyone sees that things fall, right? And things fall from top to bottom. And many of us would have seen fruits falling from the tree and falling on the ground. But why is it that Newton was able to observe this? Because any normal person can predict such a thing, but it is only a scientist can make a sense of action because they spent uncounted numbers of hours studying, researching, and experimenting the subject. So the point here is insight generation is one of the key aspects of the time spent in the design thinking process, where we try to truly understand the essence of what is the user problem and why they are facing this issue.
Okay, so I get it. It's not about asking users or people who will potentially use the product what they want. It's getting down to their level and, as you said, empathizing with them. And it almost sounds like an anthropology study, getting to know what they're doing, how they're doing it, and not just asking them, what do you want? Yeah, I want a faster horse, but what does it really mean? What is the underlying need underneath it?
Exactly. That's correct. It's understanding the need from your perspective, not by just going with what they say, because people many times say differently than what they act and how they behave. So in this case, like we were taking examples of horses, it will be to observe, take an example. If popularly horses are transferring kids from home to schools, that kind of a situation, we need to identify in what popular cases that people are using this and why they are complaining. The details of it, basically.
Switching a little bit, can you share some of the projects you're working on right now, or maybe you worked on in the past, some of the examples of design thinking methodology, how it was applied, and what are the products that resulted from it?
Sure, I can talk about some of the projects as a consultant. As I said, I work for enterprises, implement their mission critical digital projects in design, technology, and project management spaces. For today's discussion, I would like to discuss a community project that I'm currently working on. So as to explain the approach and the impact it makes, through my community, DT&I collaborate with City of Houston Department of Innovation through an event that is called Design for Houston. Every year, we take one problem challenge the city is facing, and we go through the design process and the local residents and the community's process to this solution to that. Let me rephrase this a little bit. The one problem that we take from City of Houston, we go through the design process that includes local residents and communities to come together and find solutions to that. In past, we have worked on issues like gentrification and mayors identified complete communities, road safety initiative like Vision Zero of mayors initiatives. And then this year, we worked bridging the digital divide, the digital equity initiative of mayor's office. This year, we chose to do the digital equity project in one of the communities identified as complete communities. It is called Acres Home as our target community. And the local citizens joined in person to the multi-service center that is available right in between the Acres Home. And the process was pretty long. It lasted a couple of months. We did the interviews, we did the research, we did the field study in the area, and we identified the demographic needs and what is the gap between people having availability to digital benefits that city is providing and the challenges to stay connected for education and business purposes. We identified 5 impacted personas in the region, and based on these personas, we brought together the teams of professionals and policymakers and residents to dig deeper and find solutions to it. After finishing the whole day of design workshop, one of the ideas was selected for further development, and we presented to the city subject matter experts who can really consume it to implement it for the city. We are actually in process of keeping this final presentation and looking for possible adoption.
Oh, this is very exciting. Thank you for sharing that story. And that's truly a people-centric design and understanding their underlying needs and problems of the communities. This is very, very exciting.
Tanveer, it was really interesting to learn or to hear you talk about the scale of the design work that you're doing for Houston. And you mentioned that you work with residents and communities. and also do workshops. I was just interested in learning more about the process. How do you get people of the communities to come to share their user experiences in projects like this?
So basically, the process is as directed and resource availability from City of Houston. The main concerns that we get is the communities trusting the people from outside or other people coming in and talking to them, and them opening up to the questions that we are posing to them. In our case, we do have researchers who work professionally in the design industry who come to work with the communities in Houston. So for us, the main thing of why we try to include the communities is for them to be able to openly express their concerns and issues to us and probably help us walk around the area or do a field trip or research, or maybe give us references that can give us more insight on what is happening on the ground level. The challenges that we face is again the trust level that we need to develop, and we generally have short duration of time, couple of weeks, a month to do that.
Right.
So those are some of the challenges that we get. We plan for a lot, but we get a few, but we work with whatever a few we get, and then based on that we try to develop solutions.
And Tanveer, if you think about the future, not so distant for now, but the immediate future, what innovations do you see that could come out of the problems that you would address through design thinking methodology?
Well, as a person from technology background, I'm highly optimistic about the possibilities technology could improve our lives. As humans, we are special beings with capability to think and feel. We are smart. We have smart minds to build technology and keep parameters under control that these technologies do not put human lives in danger. In recent future, I have to say 50 years or 100 years or 200 years, like 2020 to 22, there could be different things happening. And I would just say the future is unknown to us, but we can predict in a way of how we have progressed so far. For example, the first computer was built by Charles Babbage in 1822, but it did not really took shape till we were in 1900s. And here in 2000s, early 2000s, we have computers that fit our palm, and then we can take it and do a lot of things that we never imagined before. So seeing this as how technology is going to move forward, the first thing that I want to mention is, though many of us experience technology in our hands, we have to still see the adoption. We are doing projects like bridging the digital divide. The city of Houston is trying to bring digital equity. In the same city, we have NASA for doing space expedition. What I'm trying to say is, in other terms of doing the technological advancement, the first thing that we have to see is how these technological advancements reach every human being on the planet Earth, so that we can call ourselves as an overall advanced race. In addition to that, I feel that in near future, these adoptions can be changed based on events like pandemic forces. Many of them, for example, events like pandemic force many of us to adopt newer ways of doing the business. So there has been an exponential increase in the number of small businesses now getting online to make their mark. We never predicted that will happen. We never thought that pandemic will happen. But events like this will constantly change the way as human beings we are adopting the technology, or we are looking for newer ways to improve our lives. In next 100 years, in terms of technology advancements, we are going to continue innovate the computing power to more advanced technologies like sensors and cameras to gather, process, model, and utilize data in order to improve human lives. Things like, if I have to pick a technology like IoT, AR, or VR, then I'll be undermining all the other things that are happening. But as you asked, taking few examples to improve fitness in general is one of the examples that I'm seeing a lot of people are adopting newer ways of doing things. People are becoming health conscious. They have started adopting lifestyle to change longer and healthier life. In advanced cases, various technologies specifically focused on solving physical and mental health. Things like networking and collaborating seamlessly across world, maybe things like real projections or metaverse that would be used more. Things like habitat or where we live. This will be impacted in next 1 year with a lot of IoT happening and invent of things like access of internet in faraway locations. Like we are developing Zoom colonies where colonies are developed in a very remote location because people just need to work from home. They don't have to really travel or commute as much. And then comes the consolidating wider cities into compact spaces like the Line, if you've heard about it, the city that delivers the new wonders for the world. So the Line is one of the examples where we are going in future as where we live in next 100 years. For the next 200 years, though, I will have a few more things to add. So as human beings, if we are not going to look at some of the byproducts that we are creating while we are advancing, then it would be difficult for us to see or control how the future will be. For example, we can no longer ignore 1.6 million square feet of kilometers of island of garbage. And then ethical issues like over monitoring, tracking, tracing every word you say or discuss or type on your search bar, right? We are being monitored constantly. So as human beings, we have the responsibility to protect ourselves and protect the only gift we have, this planet, to save and preserve for our future generation. And next few, in general, I'm seeing a general awareness among people along these sides, but we did get a planet bill passed recently. But this issue of saving planet is more global. We want to preserve our Mother Earth for future generation to see in after 200. Otherwise, I see that it would be difficult if we continue the same way we are continuing.
Tanveer, I know you spoke a lot about your experiences in design thinking, and especially with the projects with the city of Houston. And you mentioned that a lot of it has to do with, building empathy and working with teams in a user collaborative way. You mentioned earlier about shadowing users and how this will lead you to your, design thinking approach. It can be leaders in the company, the CEOs, or within team cultures. So I was just curious to understand your thinking about the future of work, of us as humans doing work, and how will design thinking change or evolve in the future?
Well, design thinking is a general guideline, I would say, at a high level. And as we are moving forward and we have better ways of doing things, these methodologies will remain same, but we will just do it better. I'll take a small example. So there was a lot of emphasis on given to design thinking prior to pandemic to do the workshops in person, the whole day workshops, or inviting everyone in the organization, the leadership, the engineers, the technical folks, the operations folks, and the users. When you invite end users, then there is a specific amount of effort that is given for them to have them on the same room. After the pandemic, a lot of these things started happening remote. So we have found a way that even though we are not able to sit next to each other, we are still able to collaborate and work together. I've not seen a change in the other aspect, like who is invited. The same audience is invited, but we are just using online collaboration tools like Mural, and other things. Everything is happening online of what was happening in person. So in the similar way, I would just say that maybe there will be better tools used in later parts of our future to use the same guidelines. Guidelines would remain the same, but we'll just collaborate better. We will just have more automatic things done. Like right now, one person has to still take off notes and then consolidate and then put that as an action item. We will have AIs, maybe I'm just thinking randomly, AIs to do that work for us, and assistant who can automatically listen to what has been conversed and then put in action items and so forth. So I see the future will change a little bit based on technology, but the guidelines will remain same.
And you don't anticipate any major challenges in that sort of collaborative atmosphere?
Well, challenges has been always that you empathize with someone when you are in person, but when practically it is not possible, then you work with the alternatives.
I guess between a virtual workspace and being with the people in a workshop.
Yeah, I do not see any specific challenges other than being able to listen to what others are saying and capture their thoughts.
And that's very promising, because who knows, as we're heading into the future, how much of the workplace will remain in person versus going virtual or within some metaverse.
On the same vein, talking about places, Tanveer, how do you imagine city of Houston in 200 years? Is it still going to be here, considering the sea level rise and all of that? What do you think?
Well, like I said before, if we are able to control our actions now and take necessary precautions to do control on the heat that we are generating, carbon emission that we are doing, or recycle the already mass produced industrial products, unconsumable products, we would be able to contain the problems that we have created for our planet. And so I imagine the city of Houston would still be here. We would still be living the same life, just a little bit better.
Thank you. That's encouraging.
Tanveer, I want to switch gears a little bit here and have you imagine our future. And I would like to ask you to take an imaginary trip with us. First of all, do you think that time travel is actually possible, be it traveling forward, backwards, or both ways? And if you had to take one trip, if suddenly a time machine showed up right next to you and you had to choose where in time to go, either forward in time or backward in time, where would you go and why?
That's a very interesting question. And, one of the aspects of design thinking is to put yourself in a child's mindset to imagine on things and possibilities. So I'll say that, like I said before, I'm an optimistic technology. I feel given enough focus, time, and resources, any defined question can be answered. If we can imagine, then we can build it. So maybe not in 2022, it is possible to time travel, but in 22, we might have developed enough advancements in technology to see some aspects of moving objects or living things from one place to another. And then probably the concept of time will be more understood to be able to utilize, to achieve movements through it. I'm saying bits and pieces because I don't believe we will be completely ready to move human beings itself. But I'm sure that by 2022, we will have enough knowledge to do some pieces of these. With most of it unknown, I guess we would be able to travel time, both in past and future. If this gets developed for real, then for me, I guess, like any other technologies, we would have to have restrictions around what can be done while we travel in other time zones. How should I say this? Just to take care that we do not create any anomalies, if I have to use the word, to the life that we are living. So those are some of the thoughts that I have about time travel. Now, to your second question, if I get one trip to time travel, I think I would like to go in past, and this would be to understand humanity better. This is towards that in past couple of years, I have started to observe more on the human behavior or how we do things or how we act in a way that we act, what are the reasons behind it. And if we have a chance to build the best future, then we might not need to know our past and present better. Without it, we may still be able to move to the future, but we will not be able to build the best of what we can. So as I mentioned recently, I've been focusing more on understanding human behavior better. One of the things that intrigues me about human culture or behavior is the religions that we follow, or the faith that gives us hope, the strength to keep moving forward even in cases of uncertainties and difficulties. Many religions are based on God's revelation in forms of books like Quran, Torah, Gospel, Psalms, and Scrolls. I want to, if I get a chance in past, go back there and witness these revelations. And in my opinion, these durations, when the revelations happened, and I believe in that these truly happened, these were the humanity defining moments or human defining moments. These define humanity and guide our actions. And I feel that they have the power for us to not just live a better life, but the power to create a better future. And so, in case if I get one trip anywhere, then I would want to go to the moments where these books have been revealed on human beings.
That's an interesting point because I understand fully what you're saying in that human behavior in many parts of the world are shaped on these religions. So understanding the thinking early on and how it's really molded human behavior and culture a lot, and what we think as wrong versus right does have a huge impact on the present day as well as the future world. So it's very fascinating that you should mention that. So I want to thank you so much, and I will move it over to John.
Okay, John, so there is one thing, and maybe this is something that I want to mention as during the process when I was explaining the process of design thinking is a three-part solution. So I was able to discuss just the first two parts. I was not able to complete the third part. So I wanted to include the third phase of the design thinking process. And this is the phase where the T-shaped teams come together to analyze and brainstorm the identified pain points. And during this process, the creativity is encouraged to find our solutions. A discussion happened on the technical feasibility of a solution and the viability of sustaining the solution over a period of time. Each of these solutions are then prototyped and tested. This experimentation continues till we find a solution which is optimized based on the feasibility and viability, like I mentioned earlier. This is one of the phases where we call convergence because we are now narrowing down our possible solutions to a single one. So what would be the convenience and the cost to achieve a goal? And what will be the technology that will be used to define a solution would be used here. The current practice is compared to the new solution that is being proposed, and possible options are gauged. And during this process, we even welcome wacky ideas that are totally not possible, but then we encourage them. So we were talking about horses and what is the better way of not going into building faster horses. Just to take that example, say, for example, I was talking about having the horses used for commuting the kids for their school project to their schools. For example, taking them from their homes to their schools. So kids do have school projects, and while traveling on the horses, they would not be able to carry it with them. So it would make sense for them to have carriages behind the horses that can carry the kids and the school projects along with them. So in this case, to keep the kids safe and increase the speed of horses, what else could be done? And the innovation process or the brainstorming process goes in a way that what if we change the right now with the carriages, we have given safety to the kids, but could we do something else to increase the speed of the carriages? Could we, possibly put other solutions of moving the carriages instead of horse? So, for example, probably cheetahs are faster than horses. Can we replace horses with cheetahs? But what are the difficulties and the technical part of it or the viable part of it, having cheetahs as part of the solution to carry the from one location to other? Well, cheetahs are not very safe to be around household, and then we don't have them in as many numbers, and maintaining them around dwelling would not be safe. So the brainstorming process will go a little bit further in thinking like instead of having a living thing, can we use other mechanism of powering the carriages? Like for example, one of the ideas could be can we put sails of the sails boat to make the carriages move forward? But what it takes, does there's enough wind all the time for kids to reach from their home to school? That is not very practical. How about one of the new technology that is available, motor engine? How about we put motor engines in the carriages and try that? A little bit more practical. Let's see what it takes. How does motor engines get powered? Maybe by coal or maybe by oil. So if you see that these are steps of thinking from one place to other, and how different aspects or options get used to combine with one of the solutions that is there and build upon that. So the motor engines were most appropriate to combine with carriages to take the little kids from one location to other in a more safe and faster way. And this is a good candidate for further experimentation. So now this prototype will be created and will be tested with end users, and we will get their opinion. So this is just a process of how the design process taken any ideas to develop on top of each other and then finally come to one final solution.
Tanveer, it was really awesome to hear about the design process that you have engaged with as a professional. Design process like this is truly revolutionary in the sense of, as you've said, putting the people first instead of taking a new sort of sexy piece of technology that someone doesn't know what to do with and finding a use for it. You're saying we look at a need and dig into that need. One of the things that I know from having studied a little bit about the idea process is, in a sense, you are doing what I would call harnessing the power of brainstorming. Brainstorming is something that has emerged in the last, let's say, 20 or 50 years as something not to be derided or not something to make fun of, but rather a truly powerful tool. But it has problems. So you can have brainstorm sessions that really go nowhere. So I think this is part of what the design process that you've described is about. It's harnessing the power of brainstorming while also guiding it somewhat. Could you talk a little bit about how that works and how it enables a design team like this to make leaps? Because a lot of good design is still incremental. We need good incremental improvements in technology and in products, but we also, in order to move forward as a society in faster, more revolutionary ways, we have to have design leaps. Can you talk about harnessing brainstorming or what the processes are that end up allowing for new products that are truly revolutionary?
So there are two parts to it. I think first part is not the question that you're asking, but I still want to answer. The first part was that what you mentioned is we have seen brainstorming being used popularly, but many of the times brainstorming fails. And the main reason of why it fails is because it gets biased by people who have strong opinions, maybe who are higher in hierarchy in an organization. And so brainstorming, when it happens in a room, many times people who are introvert or people who are lower in rank, they do not speak up as much. So the brainstorming does happen and everyone is happy, but a lot of people would not have expressed their interest or what they had to say. That is the main reason why many times brainstorming happens in organizations, and they call it, many times they call it design thinking, but the minor things that they miss out are how are we listening and capturing their thoughts in a way that is everyone in the room is heard equally. And design thinking has few guidelines about it. And I'll talk about two of them because they are the most important ones. One is to let people not speak about things, but let them make, write, and draw, and then capture those thoughts and put it on the board. No names are required, just the thoughts. Just the thoughts and the pictures they have drawn or whatever one-liner, two-liner they have written on the board. And then let everyone see in the room what was being told to everyone. And that is why when you see in design thinking workshops, things like post-it notes or the papers of the pictures are highly encouraged. So this way we are capturing everyone's thought equally in the room. The second thought comes up in whose idea is best. Many times the CEO of the company is in the room, then other people almost do not speak up. And the decisions are not made in a way that truly brings up the ideas that could actually work. To resolve this, there is a concept called silent voting that is observed in design thinking is everyone gets to vote maybe 1, 2, or 3 times and give their priority. And based on those votings, the ideas are picked up. And many times these voting does happen without anyone noticing it, or maybe behind a board or so. So that way we try to get the biased opinion to come into picture rather than a collective understanding from all the team and collective popularity of the team through these votings and select those ideas that are most popular in terms of feasibility and viability and desirability to get picked up and then used for further steps in innovation. So these are fine lines when people use these methods, but they don't use it in the right way.
So how do we use design thinking to come up with truly revolutionary ideas? I think you may actually have touched on that, but would you like to elaborate?
Right. Of course, I have a few more points around how do we take that leap of innovating something truly different from what we are doing. I think I have used the term wacky in past, trusting that some of the things that today we don't think is possible may be possible tomorrow. So design thinking mindset asks you to be non-judgmental of who is proposing the idea and what they are proposing. When the idea is proposed, then everyone in the team focuses on, if this idea is not possible, what is the possibility that it can be made real? What are the ways it can be achieved? And then evaluate that idea based on the three balancing factor of design thinking. And something of this is called creative confidence, a very popular term in IDEO, that people need to think that there is a solution to every problem that exists. There is nothing impossible. So we need to have that creative confidence that every problem that is there can be solved in a better way, and a better way than how it is being solved currently. So that creative confidence has to be there, and it has to be combined with the rigor. The word rigor comes in terms of how much effort you are putting, in terms of experimenting it, in terms of researching what technology can be used, in terms of understanding the policies that needs to be used while proposing a process. So a rigor needs to be done to truly understand and experiment the problem, or I should say dig down the problem enough or the solution enough to make sure that we have thought everything about it.
I've had the opportunity to watch one of the videos that came out of this organization, which certainly does not make me an expert. But one of the things that I observed in it was this notion of a balance between what might appear to be chaos and what is certainly discipline, because you want people to be free. And you mentioned confidence. You want them to express and feel confidence and then open up their creative minds for it. And to me, what you've described is exactly that balance between discipline, wherein the moderator or the enabler for the whole process is pulling, pushing, herding, sort of driving this set of people through a process that has definite steps, but also has huge freedom for creativity. And I think that it's an awesome approach. And I'm very, very happy to see in your example that you have been able to learn this process, bring it to a community, and have a community come up with solutions to real world problems involving the people who are experiencing those problems. I don't know if this is a theme because we're now just 2 podcasts in recording, but I'm starting to notice that when we talk about the future, we're not necessarily talking about individual pieces of technology or futuristic inventions. A lot of what we're talking about is tapping into the potential of human beings individually and as groups in order to survive. So I wanted to, within that context, ask you if you could describe in, let's say, one sentence or a short paragraph, what the takeaway is. What do you want people who are listening to this podcast to remember from the conversations that we've had?
Right. As I was talking about the design thinking or design concept, the one thing that I always ask my class or the people I work with is to remember the mindset that is focused towards the problem. And in this case, the design mindset is a strong concept, and it has a potential to transform the way teams, organizations work together. And it's not easy to achieve, and it takes a lot of courage to develop creativity and creative confidence, and a lot of hard work and rigor to pursue your ideas. But as I said, design mindset is the core of anything that you do in your life. Please have that confidence that you are capable of solving the problem through the right procedure and effort.
Really neat. Thank you very much. Another thing that we ask for of our guests is to tell the audience where they can find you if you want to be found, and or what sorts of websites or other organizations you'd like to point out to them so that they can pursue any of the ideas that they may have heard on the podcast.
Sure. So I can be reached on my emails, tanveerfcg@gmail.com or tanveer@dt-i.org. The ideas that I work with City of Houston, they are basically available on the website designforhouston.com. Most popularly, I would be available and respond on the LinkedIn to search with my first name and last name, Tanveer Chaudhary.
Super. Mikhail or Amanda, do you have any closing comments or questions?
I'd like to thank Tanveer for a very engaging and exciting conversation. I really appreciate your time and your participation in our podcast. Thank you very much, Tanveer.
Thanks, Mikhail. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and thank you as well for being here. And I can tell you, coming into it, I pretty much understood a small bit of design thinking, but after hearing you explain a lot on not only the theoretical parts, but the actual boots on the ground parts, the projects that you're doing with Houston, that really helped me understand the changes that are being made and how that can impact the future. So thank you a lot for your time.
Thanks, Amanda. And thank you for the opportunity and talking to me, everyone.
It's our pleasure. Thank you for listening to this episode of Vision 2222. And if you enjoyed what you heard, please subscribe, like, and share with your friends. Please also comment, and we'll do our best to respond.